Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to do a follow-up on the Scott Pilgrim controversy. Now, for those of you who don't know, Netflix dropped a Scott Pilgrim anime series featuring the voice actors from the movie and the art style of the comic books, and it was marketed to people as basically being a one-to-one adaptation of the comics, right? Well, that's not what we got. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but again, we're going to talk about expectations and what happens when you set fan expectations for one thing and then you give them something else. You get accusations.
Sorry.
Final Fantasy VII, He-Man, so many examples, and it never goes the way you want it to go. Because there's backlash, not because the product itself is poor. Some cases the product itself is poor, but a lot of times it's just because people had certain expectations.
But they let people have that because they wanted them to tune in. And then when they find out it's not what they expected, they're going to react. They're not going to wait to see if he comes back. They're going to get mad right from the get-go and turn it off.
Yeah, and that is what is going on. Now, I don't know how the watch time is on this thing yet. It's too early to tell. But my understanding is a lot of people that were going to check out this series have decided not to, just because they didn't like the idea of a bait and switch. The show is basically a sequel to Scott Pilgrim, the original Scott Pilgrim comic series, movie, whichever. And it's a very different take on it. And Scott is, like He-Man, out of commission after the first episode. And then it's about Ramona Flowers. And, you know, you could have had Ramona Flowers versus the world. You could have set, or at least there were some interviews where Brian Lee O'Malley, the series creator, said that it wasn't going to be 100% faithful to the comic, but they never said, yeah, we're just going to throw the whole thing out. So again, you can do something like this. You can do something really different if you set the expectations. It's just the reason people are mad. The reason people are mad is because there was no indication leading up to the show dropping that it was going to be a quote-unquote bait and switch.
But they keep doing this. They keep doing this because they're like thinking that people are just going to let it go. Or they're just thinking people are going to tune in. They're not going to tune in for a Ramona Flowers show. They're not going to turn in for a Tila show is what they're thinking. Which is kind of insulting because you're basically saying, well, it's also true. You're basically saying women can't carry it on their own.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you know, then you're irritated when the fans get mad.
Yeah, and so a lot of people just on the principle of thing, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, they're just not going to tune in. So we're gonna talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. You get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
Go out to shopclownfish.com, secure a copy of Shadowbinders Volume 3 hardcover coming next summer. Again, this is the first new Shadowbinders content in nearly 10 years. We're bringing it back. Books 1 and 2 also available in very limited quantities. You have a day. And we'll probably do a second chance at a later date.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people overseas couldn't get this because of the platform. So we'll see. We'll work out something for you guys. Don't worry. We'll make sure everybody has a chance.
Yeah, everybody who wants a book will get a book. We'll talk about that later. So let's talk about this now. Scott Pilgrim writer explains the radical changes in the Netflix series. So it seems like they're trying to do some damage control.
Yeah.
This article's out. People are pissed. They are. And a lot of people have said on Twitter, they're like, I don't care how good the series is. I'm not watching it just on the principle of the thing because I'm getting tired of being sold one thing and getting something else. And again, this has happened multiple times. He-Man was a fantastic example of that. Final Fantasy VII Remake, they mark it as Final Fantasy VII Remake, and in reality, it's actually a sequel that the timeline deviates a little bit. And look, you know, Scott Pilgrim can get away with that sort of thing because of the nature of the beast, the nature of the comic, and, you know, the fact that it is taking inspiration from anime and video games and all that. But you needed to be upfront, I think, with the audience. They wouldn't have been angry if you said, hey, this is a totally different take on Scott Pilgrim, or this is a follow-up to Scott Pilgrim, or what happens if Scott Pilgrim's not there?
Yeah.
You know, again, like He-Man, what happens if He-Man dies?
Been up front. People would have been, you know, whether people make people watch it initially, no, but your honesty would have probably won them over in the long run.
Yeah, because then people might be like, okay, I'm a little mad about this, but I'll check it out. I'll check it out. Now they're like, no, hell no, we're not going to do another bait and switch. So the writer is Ben David Grabinski, and he said there was a very long time, I had felt someone was going to knock on the door and say, actually, you guys shouldn't do this. Now, he was working with Brian Lee O'Malley, who is the creator of the comic, and all of this has Brian Lee O'Malley's blessing. And he's in a very different place right now than he was when he wrote Scott Pilgrim originally. He's gone through a divorce. Seems like he's a little bit different than he was, so that might be reflected in this show. But they said the new series takes a different approach than the film, with surprises and new directions that fans may not expect.
But then you should have let them know that.
You should have let them know that. Collaborating with Brian Lee O'Malley, the creator of Scott Pilgrim, allowed Grabinski to delve deeper into the characters and explore new aspects of the story, while also maintaining the same voice as the original works.
I don't know. I mean, is it though? Is it?
So they talk about the changes. And I personally, and I said in the previous video, I said if I were a Netflix executive and I listened to this, I'd be like, no, you do Scott Pilgrim that everybody knows first, and then we'll talk about doing a follow-up. Because we want something that is going to be a fan pleaser, a crowd pleaser. It's not going to be divisive. We've gone through this before. Let's just do what works for now. And then if that's successful, we'll take a look at doing a follow-up. So this is the outlet, this Collider. They said, I want to ask questions that get the big twist without giving anything away. The first episode goes, I'll say, along a familiar path, but it's almost like it's a magic trick where it's luring you in. Then there's the punchline, and then you're off to the races. When did you all decide that the first episode was going to play out that way? It set everything else off. That was his initial pitch. We were talking about it. And he was talking about why he didn't think, this is Brian Lee O'Malley, why he didn't think it was a good idea to tell the same story again. I blurted out, well, what happens if you did blank, where the pilot seemed like it was the exact same story, then blank happens, and then we're doing a brand new version of the story with this cast of characters. So basically, what do you think about doing Scott Pilgrim, and then we fucking kill Scott Pilgrim off in the first episode, and that's about everybody but Scott Pilgrim in the Scott Pilgrim show.
And apparently, Netflix learned nothing.
They learn nothing. Now,
from, the He-Man debacle.
Now,
the Masters of the Universe.
And again, they could have sold that and been like, okay, we're going to do a series called Teela, Sorceress of Grayskull.
Or they could have just done Masters of the Universe, but then make it clear like they have to step up because He-Man's gone.
He-Man's gone in a world where He-Man is gone. So it's been this thing. So ever since they pitched it, it was going to be a bait and switch. Now
but they don't because they know you won't watch.
Yes. It's amazing to me we've been able to keep it a secret this long because that was really important to me. I just thought as a fan myself, half the fun of it would be never knowing where the show is going.
Well, apparently people are expecting to know where the show is going because they're expecting it to be what they knew.
I guess I'm going to find out if I'm right or not. You're not right. I hate to break it to you.
That's why they're all doing damage control now.
It was definitely baked into the concept, which was we wanted it to be a super surprising plot twist and not telegraphed to anybody. It was going to be what it was going to be exactly beforehand. I think it also works if you've never seen any version of it.
Well, yeah, it's going to work if you've never seen any version of it because you're not going to know any better. Okay, this is like telling people that you're going to give them, that you're buying an iPhone, right? And you send them the package with the iPhone in it, and they're expecting an iPhone. And when you open it up, it's like a new version of a phone that has an I in the name. And it was, it was related to the iPhone, but we changed a lot of stuff. But, we weren't telling you that up front because we were afraid you wouldn't buy it. But now that you bought it, you're stuck with that. You're going to be like, this isn't what I paid for. This isn't what I wanted. You know what I mean? And that's basically what they're doing. And it would have been okay if they just been saying, we're going to take a new look at it. We're going to do Scott Pilgrim, but there's going to be a lot. It's going to be what if something else was different. And they could have been upfront about that.
Yeah, you could have been upfront about that. And so he said, this is the thing, because people are like, well, this is all Brian Lee O'Malley. It sounds like it's not. It sounds like it was collaborative, where this guy had these ideas and Brian Lee O'Malley basically signed off on it. Because he said there were a lot of ideas I had about this thing that Brian felt were wrong for Scott. Most of them end up in there, but it's a very good kind of filter. You know what I would say? I'd say it's very wrong to kill Scott Pilgrim off in the very first episode of the Scott Pilgrim show, because the fans of Scott Pilgrim might be a little upset.
So then it's not Scott Pilgrim, it's Ramona Flowers, right?
Pilgrim.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, well, he even
it's
said,
the Pilgrim family.
I love this. There was a lot of ideas. But listen, though, that gets me, though. There's a lot of ideas I did end up having that he felt were wrong, but I got him in there anyway. So you're saying it's all, blessed by him, saying he thought these were not things that were right for Scott, but you put him in anyway. So it's basically your version of Scott Pilgrim, but you're saying it's his because he said he didn't want those in there and he did it anyway.
So this was right before it dropped, right? He said it's hard to talk about without getting the spoilers. I'd say there's part part of this, we felt like we're doing it because there's so much of Scott that's been explored before. The book spends a lot of time with him. He has a whole movie. A lot of it was trying to get deeper on Ramona this time.
So was Scott.
So was Scott. That was the whole plot. He was trying to get deeper on Ramona. I still think we found some new ways of looking at Scott and a lot of unexpected elements there. But it was Ramona's story. That was the biggest value that we could do here. This is all about Ramona.
Then call it Ramona.
Then call it Ramona. Yeah, they said she was super interesting in the book. She actually was. She was a much more, all of the side characters were better developed in the comic book. And there was so much that they had to cut out because they condensed, 7 graphic novels, a whole lot of floppies into an hour and a half, 2-hour movie. Mm-hmm. So they cut a lot out. They cut a lot out. I mean, the first comic followed it pretty closely. But then after that, they just condensed the hell out of everything. And I was hoping they would do a 26 episode series that was, again, that's me hoping for that, but that's not what they did. They did 8 episodes. It's a side story. It's an alternate reality take. It's a sequel, whatever you want to call it. And Scott's there at the beginning a little bit, and he's apparently back at the end. But, yeah. And I think some of it is that Brian Lee O'Malley doesn't seem to think much about Scott Pilgrim now. He wrote this comic when he was younger. He wrote this comic before he got divorced, so he got divorced.
20 years later, yeah.
And, his views on life are going to be very different. And he says, he just wants you to know that Scott Pilgrim is a bad guy. And there's been a lot of deconstruction of Scott Pilgrim over the years. A lot of people having problems with Scott Pilgrim.
I thought that was pretty obvious. I mean, I don't know why you have to explain that.
No, he's
flawed. If
flawed.
You're familiar with the source material or the movie, you'd know he's kind of a selfish prick. That's the point.
That is the point. There's some character growth there, but the point is all these characters, especially in the comics, all these characters are flawed and they're relatable because they're flawed, But there have been all these articles out there about the misogyny of Scott Pilgrim. He's out there trying to get this girlfriend, but he's upset that she's had other guys before him, and how misogynistic of him. And of course, it's problematic. He was dating a high schooler, and apparently they bring that up in this series too. The dating the high schooler, that's again, it's not good. They've made that very clear, I thought, in the comic.
Yeah, those friends were like, you're an asshole.
You're kind of a creep.
And that's creepy as hell.
It's kind of creepy, Scott.
Yeah, I don't know. It's because we're in an era but back then you could, you can get across that the character was a dick with the story, and now you have to people over the head with it to make sure they know that you're morally righteous.
Yeah. So I don't know. They say that people have nostalgia for, according to Brian Lee O'Malley, but in a whole new way. They're not expecting this. So basically, okay, so this sums up right here. I think we ended up with a show that's silly but also powerful on some level. I think it's going to speak to the nostalgia people have for it, but in a whole new way that they're not expecting. Translation: nostalgia bait. Mm-hmm. We're gonna lure you in, thinking that you're getting more of what you loved, but then we're gonna hit you with this big twist that's gonna make you angry. But we never did anything to prepare you for that. And they actually said they went out of their way to hide that plot twist.
And they admit that they did. And here's the thing, though. If they had just been up front, but what happens if Scott gets killed? And what I'm saying? They could have been upfront about it. And then Ramona has to deal with it all on her own. This made people watch. Probably not. But would people that watched not been so pissed? Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. And he goes into some plot points about, time travel and all this other crap that comes up in this show. But I think that's the big takeaway from this is they tried too hard to hide what it was, to the point where people thought they were getting a bait and switch. And they were. They sold it as, this is the perfect version of Scott Pilgrim. It's an animated version that's 1-to-1 or mostly 1-to-1 with the comic, using the voice actors.
Even the promo made you think it was the comic, or the movie, and then it was not.
Right, like a mashup of both. They got the guys that did the music from the video game.
They got the voice actors from the movie.
Yeah, so it was this is the idealized version of Scott Pilgrim. Then sorry guys. Sorry guys. It's Scott's sideline for most of the show. It's about Ramona. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are gonna be pissed. I'm sorry. And some people really look. Some people really like it. I'm completely numb to it at this point because we've been through this so many times. I don't give a shit. I'm just telling you why people are so pissed off because this means a lot to a lot of people. And I understand it's his thing. He can do with it whatever he wants, but you got to understand that once you're out in the universe like that and you've become this pop culture thing, which he talks about in his interview, then there are certain expectations that fans have of your property.
Which is fine. They could have done this, but they had to be more clear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And same with He-Man. Like I didn't have the negative feelings toward the CGI He-Man that I had toward Revelation, because we knew up front it was going to be a radically reimagined version of He-Man. Now, I didn't know if I would like it or not, but I actually loved it compared to Revelation, especially. I thought it was actually pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, but my expectations were set. This is not a follow-up to Filmation He-Man. This is its own thing, and if you can, accept what it is and watch it and enjoy it for what it is. If they had said, hey, this is actually a different take on Scott Pilgrim, and they didn't do that. They're like, oh no, Scott Pilgrim, here it is, guys. Here are all the scenes from the comic. Here are all the scenes from the movie. Here it is.
First episode,
boom, then we kill him. Then we kidnap him, or whatever the hell happens to him. Then we sideline him. Oh, you're mad? Oh, poor babies. Oh, you're mad? Why are you so mad?
Because you're all toxic man babies.
You're all toxic man babies. It's like, come on.
If you had pink hair like me, you wouldn't be.
Oh my God, dude. Seriously, pink hair. Don't do the pink hair. Nobody looks good with pink hair. No, like literally nobody, not even women that don't look good with pink hair.
Love the gray beard with it. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up.
We're totally wrapping this one up.
Please, for love of God, let's wrap this up.
We're going to wrap it up. So please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.